Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Felipe and I'm a 3D environment artist from Brazil with a passion for stylized environments. I've been invited by StylizeStation to preside this beginner's course in environments creation. In this course, we're going to be learning about my workflow when making a stylized environment, how I take every prop from the blockout stage to a finished product inside of Unreal Engine. Everything from rocks to trees to landscape pieces, you'll be taking a deep dive with me through the intricacies of environment art for games, and hopefully at the end you'll be ready to craft some of your own worlds. Some knowledge about the softwares we'll be using, especially Unreal, is not needed, but are for sure to help. This will be a beginner's course, and as such I'll walk you through some basic concepts as well as more intermediate technical topics including shader and material creation, runtime virtual textures inside of Unreal Engine, composition and lighting for still shots, and my overall mentality when making art. I'm really looking forward to this course and I hope that you enjoy our time together and learn many new things. Alright, so right now starting our project setup section, I'm just going to go and create a blank project. I don't have the starter content, downloaded. You could create a third-person template here, or you could just create a blank one. I'm going to go for the blank one. You've got, I'm using 4.26 by the way, so you've got all of these different options for quality, for ray tracing, for blueprint or C++. I am going to go with no starter content, and I'm going to select a folder for my project and name it Stylized Station Tutorial. And the project cannot be longer, so maybe tut. Yeah, StylizeStation tut. I'm going to use this project just to set it up, and after I set it up, after we set it up together, I'm going to go back to the original project, but I'm going to teach you how to set up a project from scratch here. So let's just wait until Unreal opens, sets up our project for us. All right, so it opened pretty quick. Right, so mine might be different from yours because I've already tweaked some things at the core level of Unreal in the folder of Unreal, but it should be pretty similar. The only two new windows might be the sequencer and output log. The output log, if I recall correctly, you can find them in the window developer tools output log over here. You can use it to run commands like, I don't know, tone mapper sharpen, which we're going to use later. Right, so you got this blank Unreal scene with the Unreal sky and stuff. What we're going to do is, this is preference, okay? So I'm going to tweak the UI a bit. I know that the world outliner is already on the left side. It usually is on the right side. I use it on the left side. The other thing that I do, and you might want to do this if you've used Unreal previously, before 4.26, is you go to the project settings, and it's not the project settings, it's the editor settings, the editor preferences. So you go to window, edit, editor preferences, and then you search for legacy. And I turn on all of these three. It's the legacy UI, so that we get, you'll see the difference. Just pay attention to where world setting is right now. All of this will change, and I'm used to using Unreal before the UI changed, so I'm going to use the legacy UI. Another thing that we want to, and it's in the project settings, so we're going to bounce between these two. Open project settings and search for auto exposure, and we're just going to turn this off and just turn everything off. Yeah, right, our scene is fairly different now, you can see, because we don't have auto exposure. Basically adjusts the brightness dynamically based on where our camera is and what it's looking at. That can become annoying really fast because the look of the scene changes a lot. So we just change it. If you want, you could leave it at on, but I don't know. I don't advise you to. So next is project settings probably, and we're going to search for runtime virtual, or rather just virtual texture. Virtual textures, yes, here it is. And we're going to enable virtual texture support. And while we're at it, we might just turn on distance fields. So search for the distance field and generate mesh distance fields. It's good to have it on because you have access to features like SSGI, and which is screen space global illumination. So that's nice. And we'll have access to distance field lighting, distance field ambient occlusion, basically some nice features, real-time features, right? Our scene is going to be completely real-time. We're not going to bake any lighting information. So I usually turn this on. And after you turn all of that on, you might want to restart the engine. So no, you need to restart it. So I'm gonna restart. These two things that are popping up is the Oculus VR support. I have a headset plugged in, so it keeps popping up now and again. Once you reopen your project after generating, after clicking the generate mesh distance fields, it's gonna, if you already have a scene set up with stuff in it, it's gonna rebuild your distance fields and your shaders. But we only had this empty scene, so here in the content browser, you can create a couple folders. Let's create a maps folder or a scenes folder and just save our scene to it as, I don't know, main scene or something like that. Just so we have a scene saved. So now this is our main scene. We're going to create a new folder called RVT, which is the Runtime Virtual Textures. And now very briefly explaining to you what runtime virtual textures are. They're basically textures that don't really exist. They are generated during runtime, so during gameplay. And the benefits of those are that we can get some pretty cool blending for grass and height blends for landscape and rocks, and overall we can get some pretty cool effects going with it that we can't with other more traditional methods of color blending and stuff. Most notably, grass when using RVTs looks way more fluffy, and the color blends more smoothly between the different landscape layers that you have. So that's why we're going to set it up now. So now to set up the RVTs, we're going to go ahead and right click, and we're going to create a runtime virtual texture. So you right click, you go to materials and textures, and you click runtime virtual texture. Let's name this our landscape color texture. This is going to be our landscape color texture. Now we're going to create another one because we're going to be needing two. And we're going to name this landscape height. Right. Now, what we're going to do is click twice on our landscape color and pull it up. In this panel, you're going to just leave it at this. Over here, we can control the content of our virtual texture. I usually leave it like this because we have all of the channels, like we have extra channels if we need to. If you want to cut down on memory or performance, maybe you would like to use just the base color, since this is just a color texture and we're not gonna actually need any of these other channels. But I'm gonna leave it as is, but you can change that. I'm gonna save it. And in our landscape height, we're gonna do the same thing. And over here, however, we're gonna press world height, so that this texture only stores height information for our landscape. Good. All right, in our scene now, I'm gonna just delete the initial thingy. I'm gonna create a folder called RVT. I've created the folder RVT, and I go over here in the actors panel, and I search for runtime virtual texture. I'm gonna drag 2 runtime virtual texture volumes into my scene and place them inside my folder. And I'm gonna rename this one color. I'm gonna rename this one height. Right. So these are our runtime virtual textures inside of our scene. I'm just gonna reset their location. It's not really needed. It doesn't matter where they are located. I just like to have them at the 0 of the world. So over here in our details panel, we're just gonna assign our virtual texture file to our scene virtual texture. So landscape color to our color and landscape height to our height. This is pretty much done. Now, this setup is pretty much done. Now, what we need to do is create a landscape. So I'm just going to create any landscape. You can tweak the size of your landscape over here to the side. We can control the size, the resolution of it, the number of components. You could go with like 1 by 1 and it's gonna look like this. It's pretty huge. The resolution of these, you can maintain. Can you maintain it and then raise it? I don't know. Yeah, probably not. Anyway, let's create a 1 by 1, right? And just create. There, now we have ourselves a landscape. I'm thinking about something else. You can see on the top left, it says lighting needs to be rebuilt. That refers to the static lighting in Unreal. What static lighting means is that instead of having real-time shadows, so if you move this cube, you can see that the shadows get updated as it moves. That's a real-time shadow. Instead, when you build lighting for static objects, so the cube is static over here, and when you have the skylight as static and the light source as static as well, and you build this, the shadow is going to stay here even if you move the cube. So that's a static shadow. We're not going to be using baked, and that's called baked lighting. So we're not going to be using baked lighting. We're going to be using movable, so dynamic lighting. So I'm just going to set these two, the skylight and the light source, to movable. And to ensure that it stays that way and that we only get dynamic lighting for the remainder of our scene, I'm going to go over here to world settings. And if you don't have this, you can go to window and world settings. And we're going to force no pre-computed lighting. So this is going to prevent the engine to bake any sort of lighting. This is only if you don't want baked lighting, right? This is only if you want fully real-time lighting all the time. So it's warning us now that the force no pre-computed lighting is enabled and build lighting wants to propagate the change. Okay, so what we're going to do is go over here, build lighting only. There. Now you can see there's a difference now because there was some pre-computed information. So now we have no pre-computed information whatsoever. This is a completely real-time scene. So anyway, now that's out of the way, let's go over here to our color, and we're going to go into our details panel. And the way this volume works, I don't know if you can see it, probably not even I can see it, but it's basically a little cube, and everything inside this cube writes to, or rather the actor that you select that is inside this cube writes to the runtime virtual texture. So we're going to go to our eyedropper here in the details panel under transform from bounds, and we're going to select our landscape. And we're going to click set bounds. There. Now it's completely encompassing our landscape, and we're going to do the same for the height. Good. Okay. Another thing, we're going to click on our landscape. Over here in our details panel, we're going to scroll down until we see virtual texture. And we're going to add both of our virtual textures here. This ensures that we write to our virtual textures. Now, if I am correct, this should be all working. So let's Now what we need to do, let's create a materials folder over here. So materials. We're going to go over and create a landscape folder for our materials. Let's create a new material called the landscape master material. Right, so this is our landscape master material. We're not going to do too much work to it right now. I will do it in the following video. This video is just to set up everything, but we're gonna set up the material more thoroughly later. Right now, what I want is right-click, runtime virtual texture output. So we need this this material to output a runtime virtual texture, right? To write to our files. So I'm gonna be doing world height first because our color is gonna come later. So I'm gonna get my world position, and out of this world position we have an XYZ coordinate. However, I just want the height. So we're gonna go component mask. So the RGB corresponds to the X, Y, and Z. So we want the Z, so we're gonna mask B and just plug it into world height. This is gonna output a world height. So I'm gonna apply, just save. There. Now we're gonna click on our landscape in our scene, and we're gonna drag this landscape material over here. And right, it's completely black now, as expected. And let's see if our landscape height is affected at all. Yeah, it is. I don't know if you've seen it. Now we have a little white speck over here. Let me just, wow, the resolution is super low on this. Make sure to bump up the resolution when you create the landscape, and yeah, tweak it to your liking. This can get really heavy, so I didn't really tweak it. Anyway, just pay attention to how much you're, it's not that bad actually anyway. So let's just paint a bunch of different height variations just so I can show you that it's working. Now if we go back to our height over here, can you see? You can see it now, right? There's a bunch of information right here. The color isn't really ready to it because we haven't set up the color yet. So now let's go set up the color for our landscape material. So now before we get to setting up the material, I'm gonna delete the sphere. The sphere reflection captures. You don't need to do that, but I did. I realized that on our previous part, when I was setting up the RVTs, which is the trickiest part, right? I went into height and I clicked into set bounds, and it only worked after I clicked set bounds. So usually these RVTs can be pretty tricky. Sometimes they don't work how they're supposed to. So if you did everything correctly, like I did, and it still doesn't work, just go into landscape sculpting and just sculpt a bit. And then after you sculpt a bit, go back to both of them and set bounds again. So that you see, like it always updates the height texture. Like if you go back, paint it a bit, like sculpt it a bit, and you go to height, you look at it and you set bounds. Well, it didn't change this time because it was probably already synchronized. But do check this out, right? This is the trickiest part. So don't be I don't know, let down if it doesn't work right away. These RVTs are a bit complicated. As you see, like you need to create these two files in here in the outliner. Then you need to go over to your scene and add the two volumes. And then you need to go into each volume and assign the file. And then after you do both of these, you need to create a landscape. And then you go to the landscape and you add the two files. And then you create a material for it. material that in itself will have the virtual texture output, and after saving it and stuff, you still have to go back, sculpt it, and set bounds. So if you do that, it is probably going to work, but if it does not, you can always contact me and I will help you and walk you through it, all right? So now onto our material creation. So let's open our landscape material over here. And yes, that is exactly what we are going to do. Now, this is going to be a very simple material, okay? It's not going to be something overly complex. I'm just going to walk you through a very simple process, like a very simple landscape material. Landscape materials are usually kind of difficult to make. So that's why well, that, and because this is a solid scene, so I'm only going to be using solid colors. So let's do it. I think the most complex one is going to be the ground. So let's start with right-clicking and selecting our layer blend. Where is the layer blend? Here, landscape layer blend. This is going to be like our main, like meat and potatoes kind of thing. So let's go ahead and connect this to our base color and connect this to our runtime virtual texture output. Now, whenever you have something that you connect to the landscape master material that you want to be present in the virtual textures, you're going to use the output, right? So this outputs to a runtime virtual texture. Right, so the runtime virtual textures are important because most of the effects we're going to be using in our scene are going to be driven by the runtime virtual textures. That's why they're so important to get set up. So now, layer blend. You're gonna our landscape is going to have multiple layers that we're going to paint on, and all of those layers are going to be listed here. So let's add 4 layers. Let's have 4 layers. Each of these layers has a name, and they have a weight blend type, right? What we're going to do here is we're going to name each one. First one is going to be ground. Second one is going to be grass. The third one, and now these two are going to be sort of color variation layers. So we're going to have a grass dark, and we're going to have a grass darker. So it's darker than the previous one. Now let's just add a bunch of colors. So what I'm doing here is I'm pressing 3 in the number pad on top of the keyboard, and I am pressing 3 and left clicking. So this creates a vector 3. And now let's right click this and convert this to a parameter or parameter. And let's name this grass color. Good. Let's assign a group to this as well so that we have a very organized material instance later. Material instance is basically a copy of your material that can be edited in real time instead of having to compile it all the time. So base color is going to be the name of the group that this is going to be assigned to. So let's connect this not to the ground but to the grass. We're going to do the ground last since this is so easy to set up. So first, second, and third. I'm just going to copy and paste these because they will have the same group, so we don't need to set this up again. So we're gonna go grass dark color, and we're gonna name this grass darker color. And now we can assign a color to all of these. Let's assign a very light one to this. Yeah, basically something like this. Grass dark. Let's connect everything. So we have getting neatly connected, so we can actually let me pull up some actual numbers, some good numbers. So for this one, let's get a 0.6, a 0.7, and a 0 for our blue. right? The second one, let's get a 0.13. This is only if you like following tutorials like this. I'm just trying something different. I usually don't just give you like specific values, but yeah, why not? Let's see what comes out. And for our grass darker, these are the actual values in the scene, right? So let's get a 0.01. Let's also get a 0.16. Good. Now let's see how the thumbnails look. Very light, a bit darker, and darkest. Good. Good. This looks good. All right. Now what we're going to do is let's create a ground with a little bit of a variation based on our world position or the world space. So what we're going to do here is let's duplicate this and let's name this ground color 1, and let's copy it and paste it and name it ground color 2. Good. Now this one, let's go ahead and set this to 1 and 0.5. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, it looks fine. And the second one, 0.8 and 0.4. How is this gonna look? Looks darker. Yes, nice. Now what we're gonna do is pass this through a lerp node, not this one. What I'm gonna do is press L on the keyboard and left click. Right, this is a lerp node. And connect this to the A and B. What does a lerp node do? Lerp is short for linear interpolation. Basically, it's gonna interpolate, so show one or show the other color. It's gonna interpolate both of these colors based on an alpha, based on a grayscale image. So whenever the grayscale image is black, it's gonna show 1, and whenever it's white, it's gonna show 2. So we don't have a mask yet, so let's make it. What I am going to be doing is I'm probably going to provide you with a uniform clouds mask. So, and I need to fetch that. So whenever we get to that part, I'll just cut and get it. So right now, what we need to do is get a position, world position. We're going to divide this by, and so how to do this? I press S, the S as in snake, and the keyboard, press and hold it, and I left click. So it creates a parameter for me. So this is going to be named ground mask size. I'm going to have the first letter lowercase. Right, so the ground mask size, let's put this at 2000. Basically what's going on here is that we're controlling how much the absolute world position tiles, how much our mask is going to tile across our landscape. And we don't want the height, we just want the X and Y. So the U and V coordinates, because this is going to be plugged into the UV of our uniform clouds. How do we do that? We've done it before. We're going to get a mask component mask, and it's already set up. Remember the R, G, and B, X, Y, and Z. So the U and V in UV unwrapping and UV for 3D basically corresponds to the R and G channels. So these are the two that we need. And we're going to connect this to a texture sample. This is going to be our uniform clouds that I still need to get because I haven't gotten them. So let me just cut a bit. I'll get them and import them to our scene, our project. So I've downloaded my texture, my uniform clouds texture. Let's go get it. I'm opening it up in my second monitor over here. I'm going to drag it just to show you. So here's our project folder. I downloaded it to our project folders, and here it is, the TGA. So if we go back to our content, let's create a textures folder. And over here in our textures folder, let's open up our Windows Explorer, and drag this to our textures folder. Here it is, uniform clouds. Let's what I'm doing here is I press this little tab. I'm going to drag it up in here so we have 2 tabs, and I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drop it over here. So now we have an extra one. Boom, boom. So this is it. So we plug what we did before to our UVs and plug that into our alert. This is basically what we just did. So this is pretty much done. I'm going to connect this to our layer ground over here. And yep, this is it. This is basically our material. Something else I'm going to do is just create a parameter for roughness and connect it and set it to 1. Just so that we have that. I'm going to put this ground mask size into a group called color variation. I don't know, just to keep it organized. And the roughness is going to be into, I don't know, material parameters. So, I don't know. Yeah. So now let's apply this and save it. Good. Now it's still compiling, so let's wait until it does its thing and compiles properly. Maybe it's already done it. Alright, what I'm doing in my second monitor over here is I'm downloading another noise texture that we're going to be using. Alright, compiled. You can see the roughness is changed. Now let's go over here to our landscape, landscape painting or whatever. I'm gonna go over here to the paint tab, and right, where are our layers? Did we do something wrong maybe? Let's go over to materials, landscape, and open it. We got our layers over here. They are weight blended layers. I mean, I don't see anything wrong. Let's go back. The layers are usually going to show up here. They aren't showing up for some reason. Huh. Maybe what we need to do is create a material instance for this. And let's click our landscape and drag this over. Just open our material instance, and now we can drag this. Yeah, everything's looking pretty nice. So let's go back to our, oh, now they're showing up. Maybe I needed to, I don't know, have the instance instead of the normal material. All right. So now, as you can see, the paint is, the brush is red, as if we couldn't paint, and in fact we cannot paint because the layer has no layer info attached. So our layers, if you go back to the material and click the layer blend, you can see that the layers are weight blended layers. So what we're going to do over here is in the materials and landscape folder, we're going to create a new folder called layer infos. And what we're going to do now is go back to our landscape paint over here, click our ground, and in fact we're going to do this for every single one of them. We're going to create a weight blended layer. We're going to go over, and it's going to ask for us where to save it. I'm going to go into materials, landscape, and layer infos. We're going to save it there. So that's one layer info down. Now weight blended again for the second layer. I'm going to click layer infos. We're going to do this for every, and you can see it's taking shape already. I'm gonna do this for every layer. Wait, blended layer, landscape, layer infos. Boom, every layer now has this. And when you click them and paint it, it's gonna compile your shader for every single one that you paint. So let's paint all of them so that it compiles all of the shaders. And while it does its thing, oh, it already did its thing. All right. So as you can see, it's a bit low res and weird. That's partly because of our landscape resolution, and in fact, mostly because of our landscape resolution. So one thing that we can do is use target value. That's gonna make it a bit more smooth. However, when you have all of this covered in grass, it's not gonna matter that much. However, if you tweak the tool strength over here, you can see how powerful this can be to blend colors, right? Because when you paint on top of it with a different intensity, it will slowly but surely, you see, like it blends really well. So this has a big effect on how our grass is going to look. And I don't know if you can see the very slight color variation we have in our landscape here because of our ground mask. But if we, I think I've raised it way too much. Let's put something like 200. Yeah, can you see? You can probably see it now. 10. 10 is way too low, so you can't see it. But 200, 300. Yeah, can you see? Like, you can pretty much see it. 500. Anyway, so yeah, we generated a little, very little color variation to it. So this is pretty much it for project setup. However, I'm gonna teach you something else. The last thing, let's go over here to textures. Let's create a folder called noise, just so we have all of the noises in the same one. This is another alpha I'm gonna provide to you. This is an alpha to use in our landscape painter. So if you go over here to the landscape painter and click here in circle and select alpha, you can actually drag in an alpha to paint. And depending on the resolution, of course, of your landscape, this is pretty powerful because you can paint different shapes onto it if you'd like. And sometimes it's much better than just painting using the default circle brush. In fact, most of the times it's better to do it like this, because you can see you can create some patches. And if you raise brush size, I don't know, it's just useful. Anywho, in the following parts, we're gonna be adding assets and stuff that use this runtime virtual texture to drive effects and stuff. So see you soon.